All right. Howdy, howdy. I think we've actually got this thing working somewhat. So we're going to talk today. This is our first live workshop Wednesday, and I don't know how long. It's been a really long time. Let's just sort of say that. It's been a really long time. And we wanted to do something that was a little different than what we normally do with the workshops. And the reason we're doing this one live is because we're going to talk about a specific tool that we personally use all the time over at measurementmarketing.io. It's called Analytics Canvas. I think it's an important tool kit that should be in every measurement marketer's belt at this point. And we thought, okay, let's go ahead and have the guys who have been incredible. James and me, he'll just meet in a moment here, have been incredible with helping us get this tool set up. And we've used this tool for years. I want to emphasize that. Way back in the day when they just had like this desktop version of it, you couldn't even get online with it. They didn't even have their own website. It was crazy. Now it's all online, much easier. But I wanted to sort of talk about it because we've kind of grown up with this tool through the years, and it's been helping out immensely through a lot of the measurement challenges we've had. The quickest one and the most useful one, I think, for most people is the Looker Studio quota images, or the quota limits that hit in November. We started using Analytics Canvas to get around those. And then all of a sudden they have this whole backup thing that they can do. Like, there's lots of cool stuff to talk about. Hence this week's Workshop Wednesday being live. So as you have questions, anyone that's here live, go ahead and put those into the Zoom chat, and we'll make sure to get your answers to there. And you can always use the raise hand icon, and then we will allow you to raise your hand and then unmute yourself at that point. Otherwise, because I said, I'm going to keep everybody muted otherwise. So, all right, let's go ahead and dive right into this. So we'll start off with the traditional Workshop Wednesday stuff. Welcome. My name is Chris Mercer. Everybody knows me, hopefully. I do go by Mercer. Everybody calls me that. I'm the lead instructor here at measurementmarketing.io. And whether you found us through the podcast and talks, maybe through already you're a member of the Measurement Marketing Academy, maybe through some of the other trainings we give, like at Measure Summit or Digital Marketer or CXL or any of those fun places. And like I said, or the Academy, right? We have the free option there for the Toolbox members as well. One thing is what we're going to focus on, as we do with all of our different workshops. So make sure you do the same thing with this one. Analytics Canvas is a pretty useful tool. It can do a lot. So that we're not going to be able to go into all the bells and whistles, but the goal was here to introduce it to you, let you see kind of what it can do, how you might use it, and then specifically how you can use it for the concept of backing up Universal, which is this little pre-built options on there for you. So we're going to dive into that. All right, let's go ahead and get officially underway. How to use Analytics Canvas for backups and more. Now, as we always do with workshops, we're going to start with the framework, and then we're going to hand it over to Amit and James over at Analytics Canvas. But first, why? Why are we trying to do this? Well, we all know we're marketing in the blind typically. We're trying to get to a point where we want to use a system that will just reliably produce the results we want as a symptom of the activities that we take. And that's what this does. So we plan, we build, and we launch. And of course, it's how we do that matters. So we're asking questions. We talk about results and not questions all the time. We're gathering the information needed to get answers to those questions. This is where Analytics Canvas as a tool will start to come in, because you're going to be able to combine and blend different sources of data together to get more advanced answers to some of the questions you're asking, like what's my Facebook spend, and what did GA say was actually with the result of all that Facebook spend. Two different data sources you can combine together. So it will help you in this way so you can get to your actions faster, right? Taking the actions based upon the answers we get. Then we think about the results. When we're in our build, we got to make sure we're measuring for the ACE results. We talk about that all the time. And then once we've got that down, you're going to make sure the traffic is set up with UTMs and structured properly so that it tells a natural story, right? A story that's not the matrix anymore. You're seeing in your Google Analytics 4 report something that makes sense because you're able to see the trends and patterns, what we call listening to the conversation that's happening between the website and the users. Now, this is where Analytics Canvas as a tool comes in, because you can combine these different data sources, right? Because we can do things like, oh, I'm going to want to use it to back up Universal because I'm going to ask a question around what happened 6 months ago in my Universal account, and I want to make sure it's there, right? I want to be able to get that answer, right? And record some of that. So it helps us to listen to the conversation, both through the trends and patterns that are currently there and trends and patterns that might be there in the future. Then we have the forecast, measuring against how things are supposed to be working, which is the most powerful thing in the world when you get there. Measurement done well, yes, it's all about what works and what doesn't. But when it's really done well, it will tell you what's coming next. Quite literally, it will tell you what's coming next. It gets kind of crazy on that note, but that's why we measure against our forecasts so that we can tell where to optimize. That's the whole point of that. And of course, Analytics Canvas will help us at multiple stages of this. Makes the story easier to see. It allows us to ask more useful questions, higher, more complex answers for some of those. And the fact that we can actually go through and then use it to listen to the conversation as we launch and get a better usage from our data coming through using this tool. So with that, I am officially going to go ahead and flip over to our slides here, and I'm going to stop sharing screens. We're going to bring on Amit. who is probably already up and running there.
I am, and I'm going to turn on my screen share. So
Beautiful.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate you putting this together. Thanks to all of you who've joined the podcast or the live event here today, the live workshop today. So I hope you guys are seeing my screen now. Can you give me a thumbs up or a yes that we're seeing the right screen? And then we can get into the
definitely seeing the Analytics Canvas screen, if that's what we're supposed to be seeing.
Yeah, I don't see my outline for some reason, but okay, great. So I'm the product manager for Analytics Canvas. I'm joined here today with James Stannon, who is the founder and chief architect behind Analytics Canvas. We'll be able to answer your questions towards the end of the call or as they may come up through the demonstration part of the call. So what I thought I'd do today is just introduce you to Analytics Canvas at a high level. What does it mean to be a visual no-code data prep tool for Google Analytics? And where do we fit in your reporting stack? I'm going to go through an actual example. So given that this is a live workshop, I thought we would take you through the example of actually building a backup and building it in the context of backing up a certain dashboard and the data that goes in it. We'll then look at the transition from UA reporting to GA4 reporting, and how would you use Canvas to be able to get data from both the UA API and the BigQuery export to be able to get data into your reports. All right. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about our history. So Canvas, we've been around since 2008 is when James first developed the first version of the product. Somewhere around 2009, the first customer came to us and who had a number of Google Analytics views that they wanted to analyze together. We at the time didn't have a connector to Google Analytics, but James thought that this was an interesting use case and made a connector that connected to multiple Google Analytics accounts. The other thing that the customer had an issue with was data sampling. So we know with UA, there's issues of data sampling and report query limiting. There's challenges with users over time periods. And so James had to really immerse himself into this data model to solve some of these challenges. Well, it's a good thing he did. So in 2009, Google recognized the work that we were doing on the API, and we became one of the editor's choice, the app that was the editor's choice for pretty much all of 2009. And that really kind of kickstarted our venture into Google products, into adding more, into developing more on the GA APIs. We became known amongst GA consultants, GA certified individuals, and agencies who are working with Google Analytics data. So fast forward a number of years, we had built on the multi-channel funnel API. We had been now been building on the UA 360 APIs, including for Universal Analytics 360's BigQuery export. So that was around 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the first time we came across this challenge that marketers don't really want to work with SQL, and they don't really know SQL. They don't want to study SQL. What they want to do is see some data and be able to work with it. So that was our first foray into building a SQL editor, so that you can just point and click your way to dimensions and metrics to be able to get data out of the UA 360 API. Well, that served us really well. Now that the GA4 transition is underway, as we know, there's issues both with the getting data out of the API in terms of tokens, but also now we're all blessed and able to get take advantage of this BigQuery export that's now available to all accounts, including standard accounts. But with that is the same challenge of being able to write that SQL. So we've been able to develop a really awesome editor now in our online platform. So you don't even need a Windows machine. You don't need to install any software. You can just sign up, come right in, and begin using that editor to point and click your way to dimensions and metrics. All right, we'll talk a little bit about what who tends to use Canvas, and then we'll get into the demo here. So in terms of users, people who would use Canvas are generally those who are reaching some limits with Excel or with Google Sheets. So either your sheets are too slow to run, your Excel files, you're pushing past 1 million rows per worksheet limit, or you've got too many different worksheets kind of flying all over the place, and your processes are not very well organized or not very well documented. You're also a user if you've realized that, hey, you need to be able to get data from different sources. You want to be able to blend them together, and you want to be able to see and create these documented workflows, but you don't know how to do this. You certainly don't want to write SQL and you don't want to have a bunch of scripts flying around. And you don't want to use some of the much more expensive data prep tools that are out there in the market. Historically, data prep tools have been in the IT department and available to IT users, and they tend to be quite expensive. Now, lately, the prices have come down, but they're nowhere near what we have here in Canvas. So it isn't a new type of software. It's definitely for people who've been able to use Sheets and Excel. If you can use those tools, you can certainly use a tool like Analytics Canvas. The idea is that we're going to do a lot of that data engineering in the background so that you don't have to worry about things like staging data and doing incremental loads. You have to worry about connecting to your data set, knowing what data that you want to pull, and then pointing it to the export where you want your data to go. All right. So with that, let's take a look at an existing UA dashboard. So let's say this is a universal analytics dashboard that we have stood up. It's been serving us well over the years, but now it's time to retire this. We know that when we retire it, the connection to the API is going to be broken eventually. Google has said that they will turn off the API. And once they do that, we won't have access to this data anymore. This dashboard will effectively break. So how do we get this data out? Well, what we need to do is first examine this dashboard and say, what is in these data sets? In each one of these charts and tables, they look relatively simple. In this case, I have 2 dimensions, pages and page views and sessions, and I have date. So pretty simple thing to download. Although I also have these 5 filters at the top here. I've got date, device category rather, channel grouping, region, and continent. And if I want this chart to be able to respond to these filters, I also need my data set to have these filters as well as the metrics and dimensions that are in this chart. So I need to build at least that one data set. As I scroll through my report, I can realize that, I actually need a few other data sets to go along with this. I need an events data set, because I know that if I query events with everything else that I'm looking for, I'm going to have a limited data set returned. Events are a limiting dimension. That means that if I choose an event and it wasn't set during the session, I will get no data from that session. So I wouldn't be able to say, for example, summarize sessions if I chose event category date and sessions. So I need a separate table for that. A similar thing happens for site speed and site speed metrics. And so I need a separate table for that. In the end, what we see is that I have about 4 tables that I need to create to be able to power this dashboard and keep this data in perpetuity. So I've got now 2 options with Analytics Canvas. The first is to create my own dashboard, to create my own queries with Analytics Canvas. So here we are in Canvas Online. I've got a dashboard, a canvas here rather, that is named the same as my dashboard to help me keep organized. And I've simply drag and drop a query onto the canvas. So just grabbing a GA query block and bringing it onto the canvas, I can now select a UA API table and configure my query. So I'll select my view here and configure the rest of the query. What I'll end up with is a data block that's on the canvas that has all the dimensions and metrics that I need for that particular table. So in this case, I've got those same 4 tables here that I've created. Each one of them has the filters and the fields that I need to respond to those filters and to power that section of the report. I then drag and drop a Looker Studio block onto the canvas. This allows me to have the data set backed up in Canvas for Looker Studio. But if I want this data in my own BigQuery or in Sheets or somewhere else that's outside of Canvas, I simply drag and drop that block onto the canvas and connect them up. Right? Now it's just a matter of configuring this BigQuery block so that it goes into the right data set and the right project for my report. The other option I have, so I've done this now for each of the 4. I've connected my dashboard to it and everything is good. The data is always going to be there. Once this API stops returning data, these data sources will still exist. They're not going to go away. And so I'll be able to continue using this dashboard connected to these data sets. My second option is to use the UA backup service. So that's this one over here. Now, with our UA backup, for those who haven't seen the demos and presentations that we've done so far, this is a separate service from the main Analytics Canvas. And the idea here is that we've created a library of tables that you can choose from, and we will be creating a library of dashboards that you can choose from as well to make this backup process as simple as possible. Now, we can't get all of your data, right? Google has made it clear that the structure of the data model is such that there is no one-click download. We have to ask for data in sets of 9 dimensions and 10 metrics at the most. We can apply our segments and filters if we want, but that is the nature of the export. There's no option to have the BigQuery export for all of our UA data, unless, of course, we're a 360 customer. But even still, it's in those nested tables. It's not going to be a nice flat table for us to work with. And so as marketers, we probably want to use a tool like Canvas to create a usable backup that we can actually refer back to and connect our dashboards to directly. Okay. So what we'll do here is over in the UA backup component of Analytics Canvas Online, we'll choose a data location where we want this data set to be housed. In our case, we support every single data location that BigQuery supports. Here, I've made the backup in the US in the multi-region. I'm just going to take a peek at the existing backup that I created just before the call here today. So if I go into here, all I need to do is create a query, and then that's going to be the same dimension. I'll dial in the same dimensions and metrics that are in this dashboard, right? So get my list out. I need browser, operating system, I need region, channel grouping, device, etc. And I'll dial those into the editor here. If I want to apply specific segments to this, I can apply any system segment or any segments that are attached to my particular login. I can also add filters to the data if I wish. Right? Canvas will then give me an estimate of how many rows it's going to take and create that as a table in my backup. I've gone ahead and made the other 4 that I need for this dashboard. Gone to the row validation. It's going to tell me roughly how many are going to be in each row. And in this case, because it's a separate service, it's a one-time service and a one-time fee. Canvas is telling me that based on the size of this download, being that it's less than 10 million rows, it'll require 1 credit, and that's $99. So I can go ahead and now run this export. I can choose where I want to get this data to go, first of all. So in this case, I've already chosen BigQuery as the destination for my data. I could have chosen Excel or Google Sheets, depending on the size of the data. Although you saw there that one of the tables was 2 million rows. That's just too big for any given Excel worksheet, and it's not going to really fit into Google Sheets very well. My performance is going to be pretty slow if I put it there also. And so instead, I've chosen BigQuery as the data destination. I then go ahead and run the backup. If in this case, I've already run it, and so there's no need to run it again. But at this stage, I would simply need to run the backup, and Canvas will now put this data into my BigQuery export. And I thought I had that lined up to show you. Just give me 1 second here and find the right window. This should be it here. Okay, and so now over in my data sets, this is the public view, under UA dashboards, here are those same 4 tables, right? And so now I can connect these same 4 tables to this Looker Studio report. I would simply either edit these tables, so instead of being the Canvas tables, they will point now to BigQuery, or I can take a copy of this report and connect that data set directly to BigQuery. All right, now my backup in my dashboard is now fully backed up. I've got the data that I need up till today's date. We'll run the backup again in July once the API turns off at the end of June, and then this dashboard will be available for me permanently. I can always go back and look at my historic UA data. All right. So once the data has been backed up, we've maybe done this for a few different of the dashboards that we've created. You may wish to still get more data from the library. In this case, it's great. The questions that we've had for this dashboard are there and available, but it's not obviously the full universe of things, right? There's certain areas that I certainly didn't capture here. There's no e-commerce, there's no Google Search Console or ads data. And so I may still want to go back to Canvas and add those to my table library so that I've got access to those tables later on when I want to go back to it. All right, so that concludes the UA backup portion of things. So now that I've got my data backed up, I've been able to use 2 ways of getting the data out of Canvas, either using the main Canvas editor. If you're already a customer, you can go ahead and create those tables that you need and back them up. If you're not a Canvas customer and just want to get the UA backup done, you can come in and use the separate UA backup tool to be able to create your backup, connect it to your dashboards, and now you'll have your full backup solution. All right. So the next component, though, is often what we see at this point is that, great, I've got my UA backup done. I've just turned on my GA4 reporting. And in some cases, it is, I've just turned on my GA4 data sets, or my GA4 property. And so now the customer is going to have a gap, right? We have a gap between, we won't be able to do year-over-year reporting because there is no backfill from UA to GA4. And so the GA4 will start, the GA4 property will start recording data from the point at which we turned on the GA4 property. And if at that time you didn't turn on the BigQuery export and want to use it, there'll be a further gap between the GA4 export and when you turned on GA4, because there's also no backfill on the GA4 BigQuery side. So how do we handle this? Let's go over to this next article here. And this is about blending data, blending Google Analytics data together using Analytics Canvas. All right. So what we'll have in most cases, what we see a lot right now, and I'll just make this bigger for everyone to see, open a new tab here. So what we see in a lot of cases is that we've got our UA data flowing. It's been flowing for a long time, but we just turned on our GA4 property recently. And so as a result, we need to get year-over-year data, and we want to be able to have a blended view of our data. Now, we can't blend in all cases, right? There's certain cases where we just can't get where the dimensions and metrics just don't line up. One is the UA dataset was a session-based model. The GA4 dataset is an events-based model. The two are not completely compatible, but there are certain cases where they are, and we've got that outlined here in a separate post for you. So here's some of those cases where we can actually blend them together and expect similar trends. The data will not match directly. So prepare your clients, prepare your colleagues for this. The data is not going to match exactly. And so but they should be directionally similar. And so here are some metrics that we can use to do our comparison on. So in this view here, what we're doing is taking a page views and page path report from both UA and GA4. On the UA side, we're putting a filter in place and saying, right, get us the data only up to a certain point. So in this case, it's only up till the end of 2022, because after 2022, we want the data from GA4. From the next step in our workflow is a calculation block. What this does is just rename the fields, because the two data models are different. Even the column names are different. And so we need to standardize them if we're going to have the data in one table and be able to use that effectively. So we do the same thing for both GA4 and for the UA data set. We also use this calculation block to add a field label, just to say that this row of data comes from UA and this row of data comes from GA4. Finally, we output the data to Looker Studio, where we can now visualize and work with it. The secondary output is something that clients ask for a lot. They say, I want this data mirrored in my own BigQuery. So whatever you're doing in Canvas is all good. This Looker Studio report is all good, but I still want my data in my own data warehouse at all times. And so this second export is to ensure that the client always has an up-to-date output of the work that we're doing here in Canvas and in Looker Studio within their own BigQuery projects. Okay. Now, the process now is quite similar for doing the same kind of blend between GA4 data sets. So let's look at that real quick. With GA4, in the case where you've got the API and flowing some data, and then you come into some of the issues like other, right? Other is where you have too high, the amount of data that you're asking for from the API is too much. The cardinality of the resulting data set is too high. And so Google is going to report other instead of the actual data. Now, if that becomes too much of a problem, you're going to decide that, hey, I need to move to the GA4 BigQuery export. I actually want to see my data. I don't want samples of it. And so I need to be able to put this data together, bridge this gap between where I had my GA4 API data coming and when I turned on the GA4 BigQuery export. And so the workflow here is very similar to what it was previously. We simply have the GA4 API connected. We have a date filter for when we want the data to stop. We standardize on column names because despite being GA4, they still come out different. We then union the data sets together and finally output to Looker Studio. All right, and then the final example I'm going to show here is that comparison that people often want to do. And that's where, great, we're making the transition now from UA to GA4. And as part of that transition, what we want to do is check to make sure that our data sets are flowing in the way that we expect, that we know that they're not going to match exactly. And there's many reasons for that. There's articles on our blog, there's articles on Google's blog now, thankfully, that explain why there's reasons for the differences. But there are going to be differences. Still, we want to see if they're directionally similar. Are we even anywhere close in our tracking? Is our tracking set up correctly? And so we have this ability to now look at all these data sets together. The pink line here is the UA sessions. The GA4 API and GA4 BigQuery export are actually so close together that we don't see the difference between those two lines. We see at the endpoint here, they're only off by about 3 sessions. So these two sources are very close to one another. They're directionally similar to the UA API, but there is still quite a gap. And what you may want to do, what your clients may ask you to do, is to find out what is the difference between this gap. Why is there a gap here? On our side, we found that it tends to be bot and spam traffic. That's what accounts for the difference here between the UA and GA4 data collections. GA4 seemed to do a much better job of removing that traffic than UA did, and that's why we see this difference here. All right. So at that point, you now have the ability to get data from UA, get data from GA4 through the API, and get data from GA4 through the BigQuery export. You have the ability to now create these year-over-year reports, these comparison reports, and you have this ability to fully back up your UA data and have it together in a separate export outside of Canvas and in your own data warehouse or in your own Google Sheets or in your own files. All right, Mercer, that was my portion of the workshop today. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, perfect. And I'll have you stick there for just a second because we might have some questions as they come in, obviously. All right, so the one little bit, let me make sure I get all my microphones turned on here. Everybody should be able to hear me. Give me just 1 second, sorry. There we go. Okay. Making sure that everybody on YouTube land can hear me as well. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces with this stuff, right? Where it can feel a little overwhelming because there's a lot to this, and you're like, oh, just click on this box, and then you do this thing, and then you do this thing. Like, can you kind of just recap the simplest possible way of going through this from a like, okay, I need to back up Universal, and I just want to do that. I don't need to worry about anything else at the moment.
Okay.
And I just want to get that done. Like, so I get, and maybe if it's helpful to maybe have a little middle ground of, okay, so first we're going to come into this report and we have to break down is what I heard you sort of talking through, but maybe being able to see this to say like, okay, I need to grab these things to make this chart a chart to make sure it has the information. Right.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's the first thing you do, but no one's going to want to do that. They're going to want to be like, I just need to suck up everything that's in UA. I just need that answer. How do I do that?
Yeah, we got
right.
That.
So like talk about a little bit about like, okay, how do you actually go through this process? Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's just push button simple. And it never is, but why it isn't, right? And why these push button simple things are not going to get people what they want.
Yes. So for sure, we'd love to be able to say, here's just this one button, just click this, we'll get you everything that you need. But the reality of this data model is that even a small site would have tens of millions and millions of rows, even just to try and attempt to get everything out. And most of those rows are going to be unusable or not required for the analysis that you're doing. But we still do have a fast lane here. So let's go through the fast lane real quick. And we'll just call this the AC demo. Okay, this is just to give my backup a name. And now here we ask you, what categories of data do you want to back up? So you might just say, give me everything I got or anything that I might have. And James is cringing right now. He's like, Amit, you're doing a live demo. You're really going to click all the boxes. But yes, James, I'm going to do it because don't worry, we got a pre-cooked one after the fact here. So the next step here is we ask, where do you want to put the data? If you say Excel or Sheets, okay, well, we have to be careful about the granularity of the data sets. And so we're going to give you either medium or low level of granularity. If you say BigQuery, okay, we can dial things up a bit. We won't go crazy with it. We'll still let you decide the final level of granularity, but we know that we have more room to work with. So you can say, right, give me the BigQuery export. Now I'm going to select one view. Again, if you have multiple views, they're all tagged the exact same way. If you have like a car dealership, for example, and you've got multiple dealerships that are all tagged the same way, go ahead and select them all. But if there are variances between them, you're better to just choose one at a time. Okay. So now Canvas will just do a scan and say, right, how much data is in this data set? We can now configure it here and say, maybe I don't need to go all the way back to 2009, 2015 forward is fine. We then show you the query library. So based on what you selected, the outputs that you selected, the data categories that you selected, here's the library of tables that we've come up with. And this is something that's still in development. This is the one that we have currently in our private beta, but we know based on the feedback we're getting from our users, based on the work that we're doing on our own, we need to enhance this library a little bit. And there's still some enhancements yet to come.
So walk me through this when as this is doing thing, like, what is this telling me? Like, these are the reports you're going to be able to build type of thing. Is that what name is versus query detail?
So these are the tables that we're generating for you from which you can build your reports. So the naming convention comes from the section of Google Analytics where we got this data. So let's go to category for a second. So if you log into UA, you look at the reports on the left-hand side, you're going to see categories of data. And so that's where we've got these categories from, and that's what the initial table library is building from. So these are individual tables that will power certain reports. Again, if you're mirroring off of just the UA export, you would use things like the behavior content overview. If you're in the behavior content overview report, you'd come here and look for behavior content overview, and these are the tables that we'll give you to power that section of the report.
Gotcha. And then I can see, okay, these are the things actually contained in that table. So I can ask questions around those specific things, but not purchases if it's not in that.
Yeah. Exactly. So then I can see, so for example, using the filter, here's everything that has the users metric in it, right? If I wanted to see how often, where are my landing page tables? So let's go landing. I've got just one instance of landing page in this view. Is that true? Yes, I guess so.
But then in theory, like what this is doing, and again, this looks like a lot of moving pieces, but what it's basically doing is saying, here's all the different answers you're going to be able to get from this data set. Like, here's all the different things you can do. You can ask questions as audience. You can ask questions around this or that or the other thing, mobile versus desktop, social, landing page report, your all pages, your purchase reports. Like, this is pulling and sort of pre-populating all of that stuff and saying, we're going to go to this view. We're going to grab this. So you're not doing this for your e-commerce report. And then you have to go back and do this whole process again for your all pages report. And then have to do this again for your source medium report. You're getting it all at one time right now. Everything's sort of being pre-built.
This is right. This is a series of pre-built templates. Now there might be some cases where you do want to do a second and third pass at it. For example, I have a different view. I have a sales view versus a marketing view, or we have a specific segment that we want to analyze. We want the backup of what this particular segment did.
Or you've done some unique customizations that you got to pull out in a way. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Exactly. And then so if this is all you needed, this, and you want to just go through the fast lane, so to speak, great. I dial that in. It's going to be 2.25 million rows. Here's all the tables that I'm getting. Okay, the ones where I don't have anything, there's not going to be any data returned. So we don't have the demographic and audience stuff turned on, and so there isn't any data there. There's no e-commerce component to this demo site, and so there's no tables there. But the rest of the stuff is going to be available to me. I now just confirm my export, tell Canvas where I want to put it. So we'll open, in this case, BigQuery, select a pre-existing data set. So you do have to go to BigQuery and make that data set, but I'm going to just put it into here, my demo data set. And now Canvas is going to run the backup there. Okay. And I think less than 5 minutes of clicking, perhaps even faster if we weren't chatting.
Yeah,
I've got this this backup now running.
And this is, I'm thinking about this like the 80% of all the questions you're ever going to ask. Like it might not have that weird 20% one-off outlier questions, but man, 80% of whatever you're going to need is being captured here. So
Right.
you now a data source that you can build reports around if you needed to.
And at that point,
the whole point. It's like insurance, right?
Yeah. And at that point, you may go back and say, well, wait a second, there are some custom dimensions that we had on our site. And this is giving me goals all, but we really want to know about goals 1, 3, and 5, because those are the ones that we had set up for our, in our funnel. And so I might want to come back to one of these tables, and let's look for one that has goals. Okay, sorry, I'm in one that's already partially loaded. Let me go to one that's, let me just create a new one quick and fast forward to that step. So I'm going to go here. All right. Pick the view quick. Do the config. This is where James is saying, see, you went off script. Why did you go? So then I can edit it and then say,
this is where you're customizing and say,
Right.
also add these other things. Okay.
So here I'm going to say, yeah, add some other goal numbers. I do want goal 1 starts. I want, in fact, goal 1 starts and goal 1 completions. And so these are now going to be included, and maybe even goal 1 value.
Right.
I'll hit my 10 there. So now these two specific goals are going to be in this data set, right? I may also come back and say, I want this for a specific segment, right? I only want the paid traffic goal conversions in this backup table, right?
Gotcha.
So these are the kinds of things that we can do to customize it. And this is really
and this is the $99 rate for all this.
Yeah, you got it.
Like that's what I'm trying to figure. Like, so when for the $99, is it going through this process per view?
It's
or is it?
If you
so
had
in other words, if I go through the process once and I'm like, oh, I forgot my goals. Do I have to pay another $99 to go back and get the goals? Or it's like, oh, you paid for the view backups. Now go back, rerun it, pull your goals too. Now you have everything.
It depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to James on the development side, he's going to give you 3 more chances. If you're talking to me on the sales side, I think you should pay. But James is going to win this argument. He's going to give you.
No, definitely. The goal is that what it is it's $99, 1 view, 10 mil up to 10 million rows.
Gotcha.
And so as long as you're within those parameters, you're going to have the ability to go back and.
So if you got some room to pull it again because you want to get some additional detail, you could. Yeah, but if you happen to grab it all in that one, it's like, oh, it's just too big. We need to smooth it out.
And then you could do another one. And if you've just got huge data and it's going to you need 20 million rows, then you do 2 of them.
Be worth a couple $100, right? Yeah.
That's it. There's a limit, and certainly we're very confident if you choose to shop around and go ask Supermetrics what
it's incredibly expensive. Yeah,
very,
I
very
definitely see that. I think part of this is it might be compared to these tools that are not giving people what they want but are saying they are, where it's like, oh, back up everything in UA, and you're like, there's no way they're doing that. Like you can see what you guys are doing here. There's no way they're doing that, not in a useful way. No. And this is the whole point of this is, it takes a little bit of setup and forethought But that's the whole measurement marketing concept is we're going to pull this information, not just because that's what is there, but we're pulling it because we need this information to answer specific questions that we're asking so we can take these different actions. And that a lot of that should already be in our measurement plans anyway. So we can go in, pull the universal analytics. I like the idea of using the report first as a basis for that to say, okay, what is this answering? What is it using? What are the dimensions and metrics I'm going to need? Okay, cool. Let's add those to the list. Add these to the list. Make sure it's all in there. Do your 80-20, maybe go back for one more dip if you need to on the details that you didn't get. But then at that point, you've got everything you need. And it's just a Looker Studio template of some sort. So now are we going to be do we have Looker Studio templates back here? We do, right? For some of that, or what's the latest on that?
They're coming. So
Nice.
James' team are working hard on the templates. This is going to be one of them. If it looks familiar, it's because I've borrowed this one from the Looker Studio gallery. This is one of Google's templates that I just recreated on our side. And we expect that our customers are going to do something very similar, that they've got.
This is kind of a good enough to get going. It's going to be based on generic, the schema as it is in Universal.
Well, I think,
so
absolutely. And I think one of the things I think what's exciting about this, and I always like to be the one talking about the not yet created software because we're on the hook for it. But the great thing about this is that exactly what you're going to get when it's a dashboard, because there's the dashboard, there are the filters, you can use it.
Yep.
And so the way it's going to look in terms of if we go back to the the wizard and the backup, you're going to have a place where you can pick from a gallery which dashboards do you want, and there'll be a bunch of selections, and you'll have a certain amount that you can pick within the cost for that view. And you can pick all those dashboards, and then those dashboards can either read out of BigQuery or read out of Sheets, because the data, of course, you have to own it. It's got to be completely your data, completely your side, so that when UA disappears, it still works. But that'll be a case when you've got those dashboards, you really will know exactly what you're getting in your backup, and you know exactly what questions you can ask, because you can see the dashboard and you can run it. So we're excited about that, because that really is going to be as close as you can get to look, I really don't want to do any work. I just want to get to the end and have a dashboard.
Yeah. Build me a table and show me a bunch of stuff at the end.
Where's our UA data? Well, here it is here.
Here it is.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And it's good. And so we think that'll be a popular path. But of course, some people also will say, no, we really got to dial in the tables we need. And it's going to be very handy to have this engine that will basically do all the heavy lifting of getting the data, but you do need to say what it is you want in that case.
Yeah, I like the ability to be able to connect it in Looker Studio, because it pushes that finishing step on it, and which will cover 80% of the use cases out there, right? And anybody that's more advanced and uses 20% can go down that as they need.
That's where our agency friends are really excited, right? Because at this price point, they can still offer a backup to their customers. There's room there for them to add their work to it. So the agencies often know what's tagged on the site and how it's tagged. They know what custom dimensions and metrics to back up. They know what the events and then what the goals are. So they're going to spend some time in the tool, not a ton of time, half an hour, whatever it takes to dial in those queries that you need to back up. And then Canvas
resell backup services. Yeah, that's perfect.
You got it. Yeah,
I love that
quite a bit.
Aaron's asking in chat, and then anybody else that has any questions, feel free. You can either unmute or raise your hand icon if you want, and we'll unmute you, or we can just go in chat if you want to put them in chat. And then, so April, we'll come to you next in just a second. So first, Aaron was asking, so why pull into Analytics Canvas and then into BigQuery instead of just pulling directly into BigQuery from Universal? What's the benefit of the additional step? So I guess I'm not sure the BigQuery to Universal connection, because there wouldn't be one in theory.
So I think that, if I'm not mistaken, the question is around like either using the backup service versus using the Canvas application. So in this case, we're first pulling it into Canvas and then pulling it out to BigQuery.
And Aaron, is that right? If you want to unmute, you can do that too. If it's easier for you, you can just put it in chat if you want to clarify.
I didn't realize there wasn't a connector from UA to BigQuery at all.
There is the API, and so if you wrote code, there are
right, okay,
libraries, Python, R. There's a bunch of stuff that there are ways to do it. So that would be the route to get it into BigQuery.
Okay, so this just makes it to where you don't have to do that.
It makes it exactly. What we're doing is giving you a graphical front end and doing a lot of stuff in the back. Very often, to get particularly larger volumes of data, it actually takes hundreds or even thousands of separate API calls to build the data sets together.
Okay, and so there's a different from just pulling the UA backup, that's different than what you were about to say, I think, Amit, was versus
Yeah,
the canvases.
I was going to say that in this Canvas, what we've done here is created this within our Canvas subscription. So if you are a Canvas customer, these tables are now going to be within the subscription permanently until I delete them, right? So they're here in the subscription because I may want to analyze the data and do my work here in Canvas. Myself as an analyst, I fell in love with Canvas when I first saw it before I met James, because I used to do all this stuff in Excel or in spreadsheets, and it was just a real pain. Now I do all my data analysis here. So for someone like myself, I'm not going to go to BigQuery and write SQL, and I'll use Looker for some things, but I will want to do my own analysis. I'll come into Canvas and do it here. So this is great for Canvas customers. If you're already a customer, if you're already familiar with Canvas, this is a route that you could choose. With the backup product, it will not continue to live in Canvas. It's a one-time fee. So as soon as you run the backup, we want the data out into your sheets. We want them out into your BigQuery. We want them to Excel or to CSV files, because we're not going to hold the data indefinitely for you. We do have to stage it in Canvas. So as James was mentioning, you're often making thousands of API calls to make this work. We've got to put that data somewhere. We can't just hold it in cache and then push it to BigQuery. So we do have to hold it somewhere. And so we call those smart tables. So that, again, will be within your Canvas subscription. Even if you're just a backup customer, they'll still be held there temporarily until we make the export. Once we've made the export and you've collected your data, we will be purging that and it won't be in BigQuery anymore. At least it won't be in our BigQuery anymore.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Thank you for that. April, do you want to go ahead and unmute? And then we.
Yeah, all set. Thank you. Mercer was absolutely channeling a lot of my questions. We are a tiny nonprofit, tiny shop. We have 2.5 people. I do everything. And we don't have BigQuery. And my real question is about so much of this use of this product seems to involve having dashboards, and then you can see what data is being pushed out and you can see what's missing. We don't have a lot of dashboards. We haven't used Looker Studio much at all. I have a couple of very small dashboards, but generally speaking, are regularly, like, I pull data from and manipulate data from standard reports, and I add dimensions on the fly on a pretty regular basis. And that's how we use, but that's the majority of how we use our analytics information. Is I am adept with the standard reports and manipulating them and making some custom reports. But essentially, bottom line, we don't have a suite of Data Studio, Looker Studio dashboards that we are using regularly. And so as I've been looking toward this transition, now I'm in a position that I don't have a lot of time to build dashboards in Looker Studio to then get me the kinds of things that I typically build. There's just not a lot of time now, particularly because I am one person.
Right.
So I'm trying to understand with the backup service, which does look fantastic. If I don't have dashboards that I want to already plug that data that's being backed up into, like, if I export to Sheets, what do I actually see? What am I looking at if I don't have a dashboard to hook it up to?
You're gonna
Does that question make sense?
Totally. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna get this sheet to load here. Here we go. This is what it's gonna look like. And in fact, when we started this, there was no dashboard component to it. In fact, Canvas as a visual no-code data prep tool doesn't have any visualization components to it, right? We connect into Power BI, to Excel, to Sheets, to Looker Studio, to Tableau, things like that. So when we first started this, it was all about the data, and it was like, here's a bunch of CSV files if that's how you want it. Here's your data into a sheet. I may have not pulled up the best example here. They're the ones that we do have. The example that we'll have, they each have each of these tables is labeled according to what was in the backup. So it's basically just one big sheet or a series of sheets, depending on how much data you have, that you'll have as your backup. And so you'll just be looking at the tables, and then you would work with them in Sheets or Excel, however you normally are comfortable working with your data. So you don't need BigQuery and you don't need the dashboards. The reason for the dashboards is that early on when we were showing this, the feedback was, I don't want these tables, and like my client, I can't just give my client this table of data and say, here's your backup. I need to show them something. So
yes,
you guys do a visual component. And we're like, oh, we never really done that. So We chose Looker because we have worked with Looker. We've worked with the Looker. We're in the partner ecosystem there, the partner data system there. And so they have a linking API, which one of our measurement marketing friends introduced us to. And so we've now been able to connect the Canvas data sets or the BigQuery or Sheets data sets to a Looker Studio dashboards using the linking API. So now we can create these dashboards at scale so that if you do want to visualize it in a dashboard, you can do that.
Great. That's exactly, and seeing what's on the screen here, that is so helpful. Because now I can really see, pretty much all the dimensions that I'm accustomed to. I can see how they would be spit out. So that's fantastic.
Great.
And like you said, in answer to Aaron's question, and something Mercer asked a few minutes ago, 99 per the 10 million rows per view. And this is a one-time thing. And then I get my tables and I do with them what I need to do with them.
You got it. Yeah. So here, I just pulled up the example here. So the first tab is our table list. You get these tables, so where there is data. So these are our audience and geo ones where there wasn't anything. But this is what your table is going to look like. It is a one-time fee. I know people keep asking us that a lot because they can't believe it. And it's because our competitors, James mentioned one, there's a few others that you've probably already heard of. They're getting you to lock into a one-year contract. And in some cases, they're controlling the backup and saying, when you leave us, the backup is also gone. So I guess that's why people keep asking us that question. But no, it's absolutely true. It is a one-time fee. The data is yours. Once we output it to you, that is the end of the backup for us. We'll then purge your data and you're on your way.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Yes, excellent questions. And thanks you for asking about that, April, too, because being able to see this data and see like the actual finished product sometimes does put it into perspective a little bit easier. Stockton is asking here. So right now, there's a lot of people who are sort of beta testing this and running this thing, but we really should only be doing this on July 2nd or after. Is that right? Like,
you've got a choice.
Plan. Like, what do you recommend? Yeah.
We recommend doing it now because we've already seen the throughput on the API slow down quite a bit. There's random errors, unaccounted for errors that we didn't see this before, where there'd just be a random 500. And normally you don't retry on that because that means the server's not available. But what we're finding now is, hey, you hit it again and suddenly there's your data. So we imagine that if everybody waits till July 2nd and then wants 10 years of data from July 2nd forward, things are going to be pretty slow. You may not get your backup. It may not be complete. Not on our side using the other tools because we're not the only ones.
Google is getting slammed by the entire world. That makes sense to get ahead of it. Yeah.
So yeah, if you're ahead of it, like you're in the beta right now, JJ and Stockton, if you guys go and create those backups now, those are going to survive from the beta into the final product. So anything that you keep there will have already backed up the full history. And on July 3rd, I think it's going to be, we want to leave 3 days for data reprocessing. Then we'll start the engine and we're just backing up a few months at that point. And so you're guaranteed to get your data a lot faster. It'll be a lot less load on the API at the time. And so you'll have your backup completed a lot sooner. So we do recommend starting sooner than later. We don't know what will happen in July, and we may have to adjust our pricing as a result, because if these things start taking hours to run for a small backup instead of a few minutes or so, that really does impact our pricing as well.
Yeah, if they change the rules on you, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But Google has said 6 months minimum, after the June 30th. So certainly we're going to hold them to it. We'll be complaining very loudly if Google is not letting people get their data out, as I'm sure everyone else will as well. So, yes, there's definitely an advantage for the early bird.
Okay, Aaron's asking here, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to either raise your hand or put up in chat, and then we'll wrap it up. So Aaron's asking, is there any support from your analytics canvas for people trying to do the backup? For us, we're super new and still learning. We're not 100% sure of what we need.
Yes. So
how do you handle support question?
So I think so far, yes. So thank you very much, Julie. I think if you Google for us, if you look at the reviews that have been written about us, support is one of the things that tends to get mentioned most often. We're here to stand behind you the whole way. We've recently brought a new team member on board, Patrick, who's on the call today. We are doing our best to create documentation and videos. We have a webinar series that we're planning to start in May. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'll be running webinars for people who want to come to the group session. You've got our email. There's a chatbot on the site now where you can reach out to us. We're going to do it as best we can to make it self-serve, because there is going to be a lineup. The reason why Patrick is here with us today is because the line is building. So we're going to try and make this as self-serve as possible. But of course, you will be able to reach one of us. You'll be able to get us either on the phone or through chat, through email, to help you get your backup completed.
Yeah, and I'll definitely second what Julie's putting in chat. Like, they're absolutely amazing. That's one thing I would not worry about with these guys, just by how much they have demonstrated this for us over years and years and years.
Appreciate it.
Because like I said, we first came in because it's been consistent, right? There's sometimes that people can make really good support, but they can only do it for a month, right? And then they have really bad systems, and that eventually caps it. And you guys have never been that. You've always been incredible support.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Above and beyond. So that for sure we can say from our own personal experience.
And
Great
I'm just going to piggyback off real quick. Hello, everybody. Also, our team, measurementmarketing.io, for those of you that are Academy members and that are back there, if you have questions, you can always use Ask Instructor Support, because we are as familiar with the tools as we possibly can be. So if you have those questions, definitely let us know, especially as it pertains to your dashboards and stuff. We'll definitely guide you as far as we can. And then we do have a direct line to our amazing analytics team. And so we'll be poking them.
Lots of options for support. Yay.
Yes, and I'm sure we'll be doing lots of troubleshooting on our measurement mastermind calls weekly as well as this time goes on.
Cool.
Love it. All right. Excellent. Thank you for that. Let's see. I don't see any other questions being asked. So if there is anything, you can always just, those of you who are Academy for Marketers members, put it in Ask Instructor Support. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to put those questions in the comments, and maybe we can have James and me answer them as well. So as we get them in YouTube, and obviously so this video will play for a while. It'll be around as we go through this. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and take back the screen share. Yeah. So that should be a now big giant white slide that we've got set out, our blank slides. And now think about the one thing. Hopefully everyone got at least one thing from this, like seeing the backup of Universal, seeing the fact of data transformation tool in action, all the different parts and pieces, seeing what it actually looks like, just seeing spreadsheets. I mean, kind of put me at ease as it did with April, sort of seeing those and goes, oh, I see how it all got. Okay, now I can build a report from that later if I want, but at least I got them on the shelf. That's the point of this, is get these backups in place so that you have that insurance policy. It's already there. Just a reminder, if you are using the YouTube channel, be sure to subscribe, and we'll be updated as we do more workshops. Also think about how it relates to the framework. Remember, we think about planning and the types of questions we can ask. You're not going to be asked questions around Universal if you don't have a backup. So if nothing, just for that reason, get them in place and start moving it through with the pipeline. Obviously, this is the part normally of workshops where, like, make sure you join the Measurement Marketing Academy and level up or upgrade as you go through it. We do have the free membership for the Toolbox edition. You can find out more about all the different options there. But really, at this point, it's go to Analytics Canvas and check it out. See if it's something that's going to be work for you. So just go to measure.tips/analytics canvas. We'll take you there. You can obviously go to analyticscanvas.com. I am positive people have always asked us, like, are you have a relationship with them affiliate wise or partner wise? Like, yeah, if there's any way we possibly can, we will. Just assume that. But to be honest, there's nothing super formal at the moment. We were more just like, let's get this thing out, tell people about it. We think it's something that's useful. We've been using it for a while now. So it's been tested sort of in the field by us. And that's why we're bringing it out to everybody else. So yeah, we might make a little bit off of this if you end up purchasing through this link. If that bothers you, just purchase through a different link. That's totally cool. We're more concerned that you just find a useful tool that can help you as you go through. So again, measure.tips/analytics canvas to find more about that. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and officially wrap this one up. Appreciate everybody. And let me know what you think about the workshop being live too. I'm always curious on that. It's the first one we've done live in a very, very long time. Should we do more live workshop Wednesdays? Bring on other people. Always open to that advice. You can feel free to reply back to the emails as well that we sent, and that'll help us out with that. So with that, we'll go ahead and bring this one officially to a close. How to use Analytics Canvas for backups and so much more. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.